I got the power of the clicker. So we're mostly talking about Joyce. I mean, who are we kidding? So one of the things that fascinated me when I first met you was that you always sort of talked about the fact that you came from a family, very primarily, like your father and mother, not like grandparents, whose economic circumstances meant that if you didn't have it, you made it. You never threw anything away. You figured out how to make something out of everything. How did this impact your artistic path, and particularly growing up with your mother? And this is at the upper right is Joyce and her mother working together. And these are all pieces by Elizabeth Scott.
Well, well, okay. Firstly, I am very, very honored to be here today and to be with my colleague in crime, Lowery Stokes Sims. I have a very prosaic African American family history. My parents are from North and South Carolina. My father picked tobacco, and my mom picked cotton, and then they picked, you know, different crops. And my mom went to a one-room schoolhouse. If you are in fact raised by someone who teaches you how to live, then I was taught by someone whose parents were born in the 1800s and knew her grandfather who was an ex-slave. So the idea that I would just go out and buy things when I had the ability to make it and I could use that money for something else meant that we always made things. It also meant that we had a zesty kind of, living arrangement. If a shirt or a towel was torn, my mom would always embroider it, or we'd add beads to it, or we'd knot it in some way so that you weren't living as if you were poor. You were living a zesty kind of fabulous, beautiful, wonderful life. And that's true because that then taught me how to live that life without a lot of money. And it also allowed me to be the adventurous person that I am, thinking, yeah, well, if I could buy that, or what happens if I made it?
Mm-hmm. So related to that, you got your BA at the Maryland Institute in 1970. Okay, this is the
BFA.
BFA. Excuse me. Now, this is the era where color fill painting and minimalism is holding sway. They reign supreme. How the hell did you think you were going to go into the art world working in textiles and beading at that time?
Well, I actually didn't think I was. I went to the Maryland Institute College of Art thinking I'd be a painter. And I was disabused. They actually said to me, stop painting for the betterment of yourself and the entire human race. I look back at my paintings, they weren't that bad either. I didn't think that I would be, like a certified teacher, but I went to the education department, and lo and behold, I was doing all the things that my mom had taught me. Mm-hmm. So when I say they pick cotton, the short hairs of the cotton that you couldn't spin and do other things very well, they would, spin it with something else and make espadrilles and wear those all year. My mom was a potter, and she talked about when they needed something, they'd make the pot, and she told me how they would, I was in ceramics, so I'm doing the same thing, and when they had a pot that wasn't water worthy, that would leak, you give it to the guy and he'd cover it with pitch, and then he would carve designs, and all of this stuff is art school. And so it was a very smooth transition. It also was a way for me to be very, very proud and evolve within my African Americanness, because I'm working in a white school, basically, in a white art system. But what I'm actually doing is employing what I've had my entire life. And last year was the year of textiles. I think that's what it was called. So now you're seeing painters and printmakers and sculptors with yarn hanging off everything, and I'm like, So it just talks about once again, that adventure about when they said, you can do this. And I realized I'd be a 700-pound alcoholic if I actually taught in a public school system. So that's when I ran off to Mexico, another adventure, and kept priming myself to try something new, knowing that I had the basic skills to do everything because I came from folks who literally made something out of nothing.
Yeah, I think that when we first got together through Leslie King Hammond in the early 80s, ironically, I put your mother in a show in New York that I was doing at Pratt, and it was called something like Exceptions. And I think the reason why I thought I could do that was because the 70s, the early 70s into the 80s is when the feminist art movement were introducing notions of the so-called domestic arts and craft into it. Did you have a sense of how your work fit into that larger sort of zeitgeist?
I'm going to tell you the truth about me. I didn't care. That literally is the truth about me because I've looked back on it and thought, now, how did I do that? I was on a quest, and my quest was to live as an artist. And when I say adventures, I took as many residencies and went around the world and was performing. I'm doing theater in the city next week. I was a musician, you name it, I did it. So when it was like, how did that involve but no, I didn't think that because I knew that what I was and what I was making in was so zesty. Keep saying zesty. Was so evocative. Was so life-giving that everybody else was going to do it too. And in that period, there were people who were like, they'd make their own costumes and they come out and they perform in that, or we'd mix prints together with something else. So it was me not being squelched or told what I can do.
What role did being in Baltimore, which after living there for 6 years, I realize is a very special city.
It's unique.
Um, what was it about that environment in Baltimore that sort of made you feel
Baltimore is
welcome?
up south.
Uh-huh.
So there are a lot of people from like the Carolinas, Virginia, and even Georgia who took that long march and came up north to find not vast freedom, just a scintilla, an inch more of liberty than what they had in the South.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, they employed what they already knew. So not only could they build and cook and do all of that, but great music. I was raised in a Pentecostal apostolic family, and my godfather was the preacher. And when I became obstreperous in the congregation, he would get up and preach with me in his arms. And I did street ministry. Now that's Baltimore. And at the same time, you have every barbecue joint, or you'll go down the street and someone's doing beautifully crafted signage and all by hand, and they're tailors. It's also a city that had a free black population very, very early, which meant there were people who had businesses and who were in school
Mm-hmm.
and also helped others get out of slavery very early. So there's that kind of oomph, that strength in the population as well. It's a large Jewish population. People just lived together. Please don't think I'm saying we were wonderful because we were Confederate sympathizers, but because we were north of the capital, we were forced into it. But in that kind of hard scrapple, trying to find the truth, came this ability to make Baltimore a unique place. It's also filthy with artists. You can't throw a rock, you'll hit somebody who's doing visual performing, you name it, literary arts. And that allows for just a fertile environment to be in.
Mm-hmm. Okay, now beading. Let's get to the bead. The bead of it. It has.
Was that a fat joke? Did you say the meat of it?
I said the bead of it.
Oh, she said the meat.
You heard me.
She's not so skinny herself. I don't know why she tried that. That's very Baltimore folk.
So if we may get serious for just a
Okay,
moment.
all right, all right.
Beading has such a strong association with body adornment, but the distinctive character of your neck pieces is how you convey a sense of issues and events. How do you reconcile these two aspects of your work? What inspired you to deploy a neck piece, the format of a neck piece, to make public statements about issues as difficult as race, gender, death, and societal prejudice to communities such as albinos in
Yeah,
Africa?
yeah. You maybe even can show that. I think you have another one.
Yeah, I got it.
Um, I meant the albinos. I, making jewelry, at least the way I make it, is a conceit. It's a way for me to get the person who's wearing it to be involved in their public self. It's things that are beautiful, people just talk about how beautiful they are. But things that talk about the horrors of life mean that the person who's wearing it is going to have to be part of the conversation. And that allows my work to have some power outside of myself or outside of it being in a home. My bully pulpit, the place where I am strongest, my best voice is as a visual and performing artist. So those issues that throttle me, those are the ones that I want to work with in the work. I know people think that beads are a humble material, and they are because you can buy 1 billion of them for a small amount of money. But it has given me the ability uh, to go beyond the basic use of that material and to also help it evolve into something that is seen as glorious and not just something to wear, some kind of adornment. Uh, it's allowed me to go beyond what I thought I could do because I am a sculptress in beadwork as well as jewelry, as well as this is, I put it in everything. It is ubiquitous with me. You have a bead, it's probably in my potato salad. I don't know. But it was the gateway. Now, I tell everybody that my mother giving me the needle was my passport. You can go anywhere in the world, and there's somebody somewhere in some community who's sewing or beading or something. So there was
Mhm.
always my ability to have that kind of truck, that kind of talking communication with someone. You put a bead on it, and then you're dealing with pointillism, you're dealing with colors and textures and things that are different. And uh, it's just wonderful. And it's an ancient form. So I'm also working with a very ancient, honorable form that I love.
Mhm. Do you think that your choice to stick with beads has impacted the economic value that's been assigned to your work, like as opposed to you doing big, strong corten steel sculptures?
Yes, not only my work, but other beaters' work.
Hmm.
Now, that sounds pompous, but it's not. Because usually it's got to be one person starts it. Why not me? Why can't I be the one? My teaching, my working with evolving and creating new techniques with it, and then not being stingy with it, wanting to share it, wanting to teach it, has made this something that people use in a variety of ways.
Hmm.
And so not only did it make my work, you know, costly, and it is costly sometimes, people, but it also lets people know that they can actually have a career with beadwork is one of the things they can do. And that goes right back to the family. My mom used to sell dinners out of the house. In Baltimore, Washington used to have them too. The guys would come around, with the wagons,
The
horse going
Arabs.
wagons. We call them Arabbers. Like they're different calls, different
Hmm.
things everywhere. And she used to buy from them. And then her food was so good, they'd come back and buy the dinners from her. There was always some kind of way to not be a have not.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that I'm a have a lot. That's another fat joke. Don't say a word. But it means that I not only can support myself, but be of some import in my community.
So I'm also, while we're on this subject, I'm also curious about how you begin to approach the compositions on your work, whether it's two-dimensional or three-dimensional. I mean, do you do sketches or do the forms kind of emerge spontaneously as you're working?
I seldom do sketches unless I'm using materials that are very costly, because then you mess one up and that you're in trouble. Or if I have someone working with me, when I'm working in glass studios, you tell them stuff and they're like, yeah, but I usually either draw on the floor or have some kind of drawing or let them see what I've done before. That's the only time I use sketches. I don't make sketches because I would just sell the sketches and I never do the waterwork. That's the way I feel about it. There's something so glorious, maniacal, and alchemical about being able to use this technique and these materials and just make something. It flows from you. It's magical. So that's why I enjoy doing the beadwork, because it just allows me to be that creative, that kinetic. This person, because I'm like this all the time, girls. I'm sorry, it's the truth. And just enjoy my life and know this is what I'm supposed to be doing. Because I've tried other things, not a lot, but maybe you try, I can't work in the kitchen. I don't like, oh, I can't, oh, I used to be a shampoo girl and everybody's face was always wet. What I really am is this artist. We're laughing. And did you know, like then in the old days, when you had gray hair, they would put blue dye in it to make it silver. They always over dyed, you come out with blue hair. Not the job for me. Being this artist, a person, I'm also a performer, and we did comedy. I had a partner named Kayla Wall, and we were called the Thunder Thigh Review, and we went around the country and Scotland and Holland doing work that we created with music that we created. That's who I am. That's what I would tell you. Don't be fearful about who you are. Just go on out and do it. Because this is a short life. Amy's heard this 100 times. If there is such a thing as reincarnation, you could come back as like a snail, or you could come, God forbid, body fluid. If this is the time you know you're you, then be you. And I have such an example sitting next to me. Because the other thing about what I do, and I'm not talking about a worm or body fluid. I didn't mean to call her body fluid. The other part of what I'm saying is it's just running after brilliance. Because Lowery ran after brilliance. And look who she is. I mean, she was running after brilliance when you had to go to the library. You didn't have the encyclopedia in your purse with a translator, right? That idea about running after brilliance and having a complete life as a human being, don't throw it away. So that's what I've been doing. Yeah, but you don't know me, so they're applauding, but they don't know me.
Well, it helps to have brilliance to run after, you know what I mean?
Oh, that's a good point.
Okay. So, you've been involved with glass for a number of years now. You've worked at Pilchuck, Wheaton Glass, you work with Tim McFadden in Baltimore, Tim Tate, Mount Rainier. But I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that it was working with Adriana how do you say his name? Bergano? Adriana in Barango.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm just
I
having
just
a little.
didn't know what she.
No, I'm having.
Honestly, I didn't know.
I was having a brain fart.
Okay.
Sorry.
I smell it.
Adriana Barango and the Glass Dress Project in Murano, Italy, that you got some of your more spectacular results. And I'll tell you a story. 2014, she's been there two years, to 2012, 13. She had a nice sort of collection of glass, and I really wanted to show it at MAD. And we had the Tiffany Jewelry Gallery on the second floor, and they had these wonderful cases in the rounds so that you could sort of look at the sculptures. So I had everything all set up and everything. And then my boss, who then at the time, Glenn Adamson, came down and he looked, Larry, this is really gorgeous, but Larry, this is the Tiffany Jewelry Gallery. So I had to call up Mobilia, her dealers in Massachusetts, and get whatever neck pieces I could get to put in with this. It was the most
Justify.
half-ass curation I've ever done in my life, but it worked.
Yeah.
So, as we can see here, we have some sculptures made in the round from beads, and we also have a glass sculpture. Talk about how that all comes together with the beading and the glass and all that stuff.
The first year I went to Haystack Mountain School of Crafts was 1974. And I was there for weeks working with African and African American artists. Then I came back in 76 for the bicentennial year. Every time I was there, I would meander into the glass studio and think, wow. It made me think of what my mom had talked about the blacksmiths and how they were with the fire and they were beating things and whatever. But the idea that you would be silly enough to pick up glass and then put it next to the pipe to your mouth, I thought, this is so amazing. Someone will have to do this for me. So anytime I would be in a residency somewhere or teaching, like at Pilchuck or Pendland, I'd insinuate myself into the glass department, trying to figure out the idea of translucency and transparency along with the beadwork, and how I could fuse them literally together to make a piece that has integral components of both. I was always into translucency and finding oneself in clearness and truth. So using glass was really a good thing. Christy laughed at that, I don't know why. Using glass was really a great thing. It also was one thing I hadn't conquered yet.
Mm.
I really am one of those aficionados of, you ain't the boss of me. You can't tell me what to do. Once again, you live once, so I might as well be out here in the glass department. Let me tell you something about Beringo. This is in Murano, Italy. And the Beringo Glass Studio is a classic studio. And in the past, this was 2011, they really weren't that happy about having women. It's still a guy's thing, right? Classic Italians. A black girl from Baltimore? So this is what I did. I had on this wonderful velvet ensemble that was made for me, and my big curly wig. And I know that they like opera. So I walked in. Let's see if I got any voice today. I walked in there like, que se fan. The absolute truth. I walked in there like, menage de queso de pie. And they worked with me. They would say no, I'd say they'd say no. We would draw, they'd pull out that blue Buddha that you see was made there. And the hand that has a flaming person, that was a lampwork person. What I can say to you is, I want to die and wake up in my coffin and say, I got 4 more minutes for you, okay? That means that I want to just keep working, trying. And glasswork gave me one more avenue into that experimentation that I'm looking for. Because I don't know why else I'm here. If it is just to be glorious and beautiful, let's tell the truth. It is to live this life, run it down, get hung up wet, reincarnate, and come back as the morning sun or body fluid.
Tell the story about the figure that you made, which eventually became a Narcissus figure that we collected at MAD. It was like there was a mistake and they wanted to throw it away.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
The other thing.
You know that story?
I remember that.
Okay.
Because there are a lot of things that people like to throw away. I'm like, So, these are traditional glass blowers. So they're making a piece and it's not the right dimensions or the feet. They couldn't get the feet on, and so they just throw it away. Now, this is after it took all this time to make this beautiful body for me, and the feet were like, I said, no, 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 we're not throwing away anything. And they said, what are you going to do? I said, I'll figure it out. And so when we came back, I turned the figure upside down, the woman, and then on top of it was a guy. That's the piece, right? There's a man on top, and then there's beaded stuff and all, because what I told you about making something out of nothing, and where there's a will, there's a way. You it's like a relationship, you just don't stop because you have a bump in the road. Yeah. For me, if you have a hole in the road, you fall into it and you climb out, learned a bunch of stuff. And that's every one of those pieces that they wanted to throw away or that we would break. I figured out how to use them. And that's also the way I would be using life or being in life. So uh, all of those things are joyous moments for me. And they are learning moments for the people who I'm working with. Many times it's like, never work with her again. That could be it because I don't want to mess with broken up stuff. Or they'll say, I never saw that before, that you could turn that around. Especially when we're fusing my beadwork to the glass. It has to be compatible. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the idea that I could come in with beadwork and say, pick this up, and it blends, is very similar to my talking about the idea of my coming into a studio with folks who either don't know what I do or not that interested in working with me, and watch how it changes through just the glory of the work. So
One of the things that was interesting to observe, despite the fact you persist in forcing people like me, a curator, to help you make your work, was the fact that you had a number of assistants, particularly for your last big show that was at the BMA and at the Seattle Art Museum. How does such a loner like yourself begin to sort of like incorporate the creativity of other people? Do you stand over them and tell them which bead to put in, or do you just let them have a general concept?
well, if I could have done the entire show myself, I would have. But there's always like the time limit, the deadline. And so that no one was dead on that line, that meant that I had to have people work with me. But knowing that meant that I just couldn't say, make the pieces and then say, okay, you just put that together for me. It meant that I then had to be a mentor for them because they were working with me because not only did they want to get paid, they wanted to learn. So I would make pieces. We talk about joining them together. I'd show them maybe where the seams were, and then I'd let them join them together, and they would ask me questions, and they would do. And then sometimes at the end of the week, I'd ask them to bring their stuff in, and we'd have talks about the work. Uh, I think that it's very important for me to share what I have. I really don't believe that I was put here to be stingy with it. If I make something up, you can have it. You should give me credit. You shouldn't try to be making money off my stuff. But you can say, I learned that for Joyce. Because that's what I do with those who taught me. Art Smith, the man. Why else?
So, in the interview we did for Mad Show in 2014, you said, and I quote, "For me, there are no mistakes, only opportunities. I'm speaking about actualizing the dream, bowing to the shift, allowing the material to hold sway, and stop thinking that you rule the world." So, how has this predicated wall pieces like we have on the wall now, including the work that's at view at the National Museum of Women and the Arts?
It is that I could drop all of that stuff that I'm supposed to have because I'm a fine artist. I'm not a snob about my materials, so there's plastic in there, there's fishing lines, you name it. Uh, it means that I'm still ready to go the course. There's a song that I wrote, and I'll use it because it directly relates to this.
Okay.
Do yourself a favor. 2 years of hard labor. Dig yourself a hole and then jump on in. While you're climbing out, find out what life's all about. Crimes. And that's called Crimes Committed in the Name of Love. So if I mess up at whatever I do, thank you, it's about crawling out of that hole and finding something new. Because, and this is my last thing because it's 000, I literally, like everybody in this audience in some way, I literally am standing on the shoulders of those people who created for me, but for African Americans many times, for people who actually died for me to have this opportunity. So I'm not going to let it go. I'm going to be that person. I ain't dying now, don't get me wrong. But I'm going after it.